Every 5 to 7 years we have to trim this massive laurel hedge which runs along the main ride in the middle of the gardens at Caerhays. It's an amazingly long-winded job and requires quite a bit of working at heights with ladders and pole saws, and we now have an electric handheld chainsaw. And you can see, if you look closely at the stumps, you can see where it was last cut back about 5 or 7 years ago, and you can see where we've cut it back again. And laurel is amazingly resilient and will shoot out and be a good windbreak again by the end of the summer. But we've come across one rather major problem in cutting down the hedge. This tree fern, which has been here for well over 100 years, has been pushed out by the laurel and is now on a tremendous tilt. And the question is, how much longer will it stay upright, and how long before gravity takes over and it falls down? What people don't realize about tree ferns is that they first arrived in this country about 1870, and these great trunks were used in the holds of merchant ships to stop ballast and cargo moving around in the holds. And when the mariners got back to Falmouth docks, they chucked out these tree ferns onto the sides of the docks, and not surprisingly they started to sprout, and that's how they ended up in Cornish gardens. Because this trunk is actually not really a trunk at all, it's extremely hard, and it's dense. It's a dense mat of roots. And over the years this tree fern has grown taller and taller, and you can see where the fronds have dropped off each year until we get up to the very top of the crown, which is maybe 17 feet tall. Perhaps not quite a record, but certainly a fairly gigantic tree fern by anyone's standards. But what people don't realize is we can cut off this tree fern anywhere we wanted to with a chainsaw and stick the roots back in the ground, and the tree fern would restore itself and recover. And it doesn't matter really whether we cut it there or whether we cut it there or wherever in the trunk we wanted to cut it. We could simply replant it and grow it again. So when it does fall down, that will not be the end of this tree fern. We will simply replant it right beside where it grew before. And if we look across into the other side, we'll see where spores of this tree fern fell against the roots of an oak tree, and a young tree fern was created probably 40 or 50 years ago, and that's growing away nicely as evidence that these tree ferns can and do regenerate in our British climate, which is not really so very different to Tasmania or New Zealand, where these tree ferns grow under the canopies of other trees in very damp, humid environments, exactly what we've got in the walled garden. But as we turn and look further down the line of this many hundred yards of laurel hedge, you can see that we've still got quite a big job to do, especially getting the high up branches cut off. We won't have to do this job again for another 5 or 7 years. We won't have to do this job again for another 5 or 7 years, and I'm very thankful, and so is our wonderful gardening team, who are doing this job slowly but now much more efficiently with chainsaws on poles and with handheld chainsaws, which make the job so much more quick than it was in the days when all you had to use was a bow saw.